What's up, everyone? Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. Mike, we got a cool one tonight. We're going to talk about a cryptid that I've never come across.
Oh.
I always feel a little shame in that way because I always feel like I should have known about it.
See, I feel titillated.
Oh, yeah. I feel
excited.
I felt a little bit of that too, especially doing the research I did on it. And,
nice.
Yeah, it's one from Africa. And we've done a show about African cryptids, and I was shocked to not come across this guy. He didn't seem familiar to me at all. But
I think it was probably because most of our research on the African cryptids were centered on dinosaurs.
Yeah. Well, see,
unless he's a dinosaur that we haven't heard of. Is he a dinosaur we haven't heard of?
Possibly.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, this guy's got a description that's very bizarre. And Africa's home to many amazing cryptids. We all love Mokele Mbembe. We got Jaba Fofi, the Congo snake. Kangamoto is another weird one that we'll get into. The list keeps going, and worry not, we'll get to all of them someday. But Africa was always mentioned in all the cool books about monsters and cryptids as when we read as a kid. And it's always been a cool and mysterious place. So there is kind of like a stipulation when it comes to cryptids from Africa. And we've talked about this when we did our show on African cryptids, is that Mokele Mbembe is awesome and stuff like that, but he's a dinosaur. He's a species of something that we know about. The 50-foot snake is cool, but it's just a snake. It's not too monster-like. It's lacking in monster qualities, but the one we're going to talk about definitely does have some weird qualities. But it is called the Dingonek.
What's it called? The Dingonek?
It's spelled Dinonek.
It sounds like a dinosaur.
It sure does. Although this creature ended up being well known to locals, the Dingonek came to Western attention through a man named Edgar Beecher Bronson. Now, I wanted to give this show a good old Talking Till Dawn research look. So I looked up who this guy was instead of just going at face value of this story comes from this dude. He was the nephew of famed abolitionist Henry Ward Beecher. Are you familiar with him?
Name sounds familiar, but I don't know.
Yeah, the Beecher family was a big famous family. So yeah, he started out as a reporter for the New York Tribune. In 1877, he headed to Wyoming to learn the business of cattle, which he did, and interestingly enough, under a man named Clarence King, who was the first director of the USGS, which is probably the dude I'd want to learn how to maintain myself in the plains type areas. But he ended up starting his own ranch after working only one season. And that work led him to become a noted photographer and eventually a globe-trotting big game hunter. Later in life, Bronson became a writer, penning 5 books between 1908 and 1917, including his memoir, a book called Enclosed Territory, written in 1910. That was his 3rd book, so it's not like it was something that he rushed to write, which was about his time spent in Africa as a murderer of exotic animals, and that included the original version, over 100 of his own photos. So as far as witnesses to something like this goes...
Are there any records of Mokele Mbembe or anything like that?
I don't know if he talked about Mokele Mbembe in his book. I looked up a couple of books that I'm going to talk about, and there were few and far between. They're very old, beat up, and expensive. So I don't know if he talked about that. But in his memoir here, we'll get to what he mentions in there. But what do you think about this guy as a witness to something like this? He started off as a reporter.
I mean,
sounds good.
It could be a Percy Fawcett situation. You know, like a guy who's got all the credentials in the world and has outlandish tales to tell of his adventures into exotic locales.
Right. I very much got that feeling when I was reading about Bronson. And the story we get of the Dingonek comes from his book here, Enclosed Territory. And he mentions that he came across another man named John Alfred Jordan. And it was hard to find information on this guy, but he was a famous, legendary big game hunter who spent a whole shit ton of time in Africa. And I thought that Bronson was pretty badass, but Jordan was the real badass. And he was so badass, he was actually in the 19th century had the title of adventurer still, which was cool. At the age of 21, he had already ran away from home from England and was in Nairobi, Kenya to take part in the Boer Wars, which had to be amazing because it was pre-World War I, but it was still wartime. But when he got there, everything was so rough, he figured, oh shit, I'm going to fucking die here before I can even get back to England. So he dug in he did. He ended up staying there for 20 years. And during these 20 years, he became a famous big game hunter. His life in Africa and his adventures had become the stuff of legend, so much so that as he got older, someone named George Leith figured that he wanted to document his life and wanted to do so while he was still around. So that they did in the form of a book called The Stone Elephant by John Alfred Jordan, quote, as told to George Leith. That was published in 1959. I actually found that one on Amazon for around $45. So if you're interested in checking that out, I'll throw that in the show notes. But that book, you'll learn how much of a badass this guy was. It was recorded that even at age 21, he was able to venture into the wild on safari for 2 years at a time.
Like continuously for 2 years, he's just like, I'm setting up shop in the wilderness and killing shit.
Yes.
Wow. That's pretty badass.
He had malaria 1 billion times.
1 billion. Record-breaking malaria victim 1 billion times. Good for him. And he survived it?
Oh, yeah. He also had black water fever 6 times.
What the fuck is black water fever?
I don't know.
Never even heard of that animal.
Terrible. Yeah, it's from drinking contaminated water.
I would hope so with a name like that. Blackwater fever. It's certainly not from flying in the air.
It's not a disease you get from rabbits.
Yeah, no. It's got a very distinctive name. So don't drink black water.
Yeah.
That's the moral of the story here.
He also survived being bitten by a black mamba.
God damn, this guy is fucking Hercules.
Oh, yeah.
Did he also fight a lion and kill it with his bare hands?
No, but he was speared by the Kisi tribe.
Of course he was.
And after that, he was made blood brother to the chief of the Maasai tribe.
Oh my God. Is he the most badass man alive? Because it certainly sounds like it.
Yeah, so this Jordan was the badass, and it was Jordan again who told Bronson about his encounter with this creature. As I said, Jordan was a big-time legend, and Bronson was no bitch either, just as deep into the African jungle and bush as Jordan was, and eventually their paths crossed. And it was in the wild around a campfire where Jordan told his story to Bronson. Jordan told Bronson, and I'm going to quote this here. During their talk, they're just talking about stuff, and Jordan says, quote, "Then there's the infernal horror of the reptilian bounder that comes up the Maggori River out of the lake. The Lumbwa have christened it Dingonek, and it's real prize money that beauty would fetch, 5 or 10,000 quid at least. And you bet I've got my Wanrabo and Lumbwa, his hunting companions, always on the lookout for one when the Maggori is in flood. One day I heard the bush smashing in front of me, and up raced my Lumbwa, wide-eyed and gray, with the yarn that they had seen a frightful, strange beast on the riverbank, which at sight of them had plunged into the water. As they described it, some sort of cross between a sea serpent, a leopard, and a whale. Thinking they had gone crazy or were pulling my leg, I told them I'd believe them if they could show me, but not before. After a long talk amongst themselves, back they finally ventured, returning in half an hour or so to say that it lay fully exposed on the water in midstream. Holy saints, but he was a sight 14 or 15 feet long. Head big as that of a lioness, but shaped and marked like a leopard. 2 long white fangs stick down straight out of his upper jaw. Back as broad as a hippo, scaled like an armadillo, but colored and marked like a leopard. And a broad finned tail, with slow, lazy swishes of which he was easily holding himself level in the swift current, headed upstream. God, but he was a hideous old haunter of a nightmare, was that beast fish. that made you want an aeroplane to feel safe from him. For a while, he lay upstream from me. I'd been brought down to the riverbank precisely where he had taken water. And there, all about me in the soft mud and loam, were imprints of feet wide of diameter as a hippo's, but clawed like that of a reptile's. Feet you knew could carry him ashore, and claws you could be bally well sure no man could ever get loose from once they had nipped him. Its fangs appeared long enough to go clean through a man. He then went on to describe how he sat and watched the creature for a while, but after a few minutes, he realized the creature may see him and attack. So he decided to not take any chances and fired a .303 bullet behind, quote, his leopard ear. The creature sprang out of the water. Jordan and his buddies broke for the bush in terror. Jordan says that he calmed down, stopped for a second, and listened to see if this thing was chasing them. And he didn't hear anything at all, so they regrouped. And then he went on to say that he searched along the shorelines and even in other bodies of water over several miles for 2 days, looking for a corpse, but he never found it. He said he didn't even come across his tracks again. But when Jordan told Bronson this, he can see that Bronson wasn't believing the story too much. And he told him, go ahead and ask the guys. They're right here. And after a talk with everybody, through an interpreter, of course, Bronson claims that they provided nearly the same description of the creature.
So have other independent sources had provided the same description of this thing, do you know? Or is the description only based on the sighting between these three people?
Well, later on, there's other people who look into stories and supposed sightings of this creature. And as I stated when we started, it was very well known to some of the locals around. I mean, there's even a guy they give his name, and I'll get to it, but his name, they called him an ex-collector. I don't know of rare artifacts, but he speaks about a certain group of people who are very well aware of a serpent-like creature in that lake. And they often burn sacrifices to it because it brings about good luck for their harvest and prosperity. So this thing is, I loved reading about it because for those of you who are a little bit younger, there used to be a show called Monster Quest. And it was back when, what was it, Mike, the History Channel, right?
I think it was the History Channel, yeah.
Yeah, but they would send, quote, experts in the fields of these things to go look for these creatures. And they sent somebody to the Congo to go look for Mokele Mbembe. And I loved this experiment. He took a photo book with him. And sorry, old listeners, if you heard me say this 100 times before, but he had a picture book of all sorts of animals. And some of them were mixed with, indigenous animals, some that weren't on that continent. And he threw a picture of a brontosaurus in the middle of it. And he would talk to the tribes people and show them the pictures, and they would nod when they saw something that they recognized. And when they saw something, like a grizzly bear, they didn't know what the hell that was. And when they got to the picture of this brontosaurus, they all went, yeah, it's Mokele Mbembe, and turned the next page. They just breezed right over it. It was just fact to them. And that's very much the case here when it comes to this creature, apparently.
And it seems like there's a lot of animals like that. I remember, this is going way back, like almost 20 years probably. Like you remember, actually, I can't remember now. It's some website that's now defunct, but it was one of those websites that sprung up in the early 2000s, with the shitty effects and all that. But it had a bunch of cryptids from Africa, and I remember reading about this one that later, after I read about it, was confirmed to be real. And I think it was some sort of big predatory cat, if I remember correctly. But for the longest time, it was just this native folktale, I guess. And then it was revealed, like, oh shit, it is real. It's not just some hell beast that they're making up. So it's, if that is a possibility, then why do we discount everything else?
Right.
just because we can't find it. But they're like, nah, dude, this is everyday life out here. There's a fucking brontosaurus monster.
Yeah, I just love that aspect of it. When again, this is coming light to Western and European awareness, but like you said, it's old news to them. And even with like the Aborigine people, when it came to the bunyip, they sent European people over there to check out what was going on, and they came back and said, "Yep, there's there's this giant fucking thing over there that destroys people." So this creature is no different. They very much knew about it. In fact, I just found it. Bronson stated that when he visited Uganda, he met with, quote, ex-collector James Martin, who told him that, quote, a great water serpent or reptile was seen on or near the north shore of the lake, which was worshipped by the natives who believed its coming a harbinger of heavy crops and large increase of their flocks and herds. So this thing is known to be there, just as much as Mokele and Bembe. We can get more Percy Fawcett with it. He talked about seeing the fucking giant spiders in the Brazilian jungle. Then now we know that there's insane species of spiders that can get almost as big as what he's talking about. There's other ones seen in Africa in similar environments. So,
well, I wouldn't say as big as he was talking about dog-sized spiders. Like the largest spider that's ever been on record is the Goliath bird-eating spider. And I believe they have a leg span of 12 inches. So, well, I mean, that's fucking huge. Like, imagine a foot wide spider. Fuck that.
Yeah. And we are talking
it's
about
certainly not dog size.
Yeah, but I don't think it's impossible for something much bigger, something like a spider anyway, to exist in some of these super secluded, closed off places. Those things do nothing but have had thousands of years to be themselves and just eat.
Somewhere in the middle of the jungle is the immortal spider.
He works out every
27 feet wide. He eats nothing but dinosaurs. He is extinction.
Extinction, the prehistoric spider of power.
And he'll also eat your mom.
But moreover, Bronson states, quote, again in December, while dining with the senior deputy commissioner, C.W. Hobley, at his residence in Nairobi, the very night before sharing on his safari, in speaking of the origin of the sleeping sickness, Mr. Hobley told me that the Baganda, Wosaga, and the Kirirando of the north shore of the lake had from time immemorial sacrificed burnt offerings of cattle and sheep to a lake reptile of great size and terrible appearance they called Lakwata, which occasionally appeared along or near the shore, that since the last coming of Lakwata was just shortly before the first outbreak of the sleeping sickness, the natives firmly believe that the Mzungu have killed Lakwata with the purpose and as the means of making them victims of the dread plague. Of the existence in the lake of such an unclassified reptile, Mr. Hobley considered there was no question.
To me, does this sound like the old stories of dragons to you? Like you have to sacrifice animals or a virgin or treasure to make sure the dragon doesn't destroy your village.
That's very interesting, and I almost didn't make the connection, it being, in my mind, I'm just seeing a canopy of trees and all that stuff, and my mind's painting this very jungle-like picture, but I didn't link it to a hilly English side of a dragon, that type of environment. But now that you say that, it's very the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a different setting. Like, what if this was, and it's funny that you bring this up independently because just a little teaser for you guys. I'm doing research on Dragon Tales right now. Not the kids' cartoon Dragon Tales, but stories about dragons. And this ties in with that so well because it's the classic thing. Like, just you got to placate the monster, and he'll spare us from his wrath.
It's interesting when you hear about them leaving food offerings to creatures like this. We hear about that through history when it comes to cryptids and monsters. And like you said, leaving a virgin, that a human sacrifice, I doubt they took him home and humped him. I'm sure they were eaten if these things really happen.
It's just the virgins are looked at as being pure. So you give up a virgin and it's like the ultimate sacrifice.
Right. It's interesting that they're burning sacrifices. It's more of an act than an offering. And it still seems to appease this creature. It's the reports that I've seen, it just lays up on the shore.
It's like Jabba the Hutt, just this big fat fucking thing, and everyone's like, "Oh God, kill everything we have to make sure it does." And it's just like, I just like to watch everybody die. I will sit here and let you do it.
Yeah, the Jordan said that when he shot it and it went into the water and sprang up. He said that its tail was so powerful that he noticed that all 4 of its limbs were out of the water. It was holding itself up out of the water with its tail strength alone.
Just on its tail strength.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
Now, Mike hasn't heard about this creature as well, so I'm going to send you an image in your email right now of a depiction that I fucking love. It's got some really cool Jack Kirby inking detail to it. Take a look at this guy.
Holy shit, that looks like a fucking Godzilla monster.
It sure does. And its face...
Except, I mean, it's smaller, but it totally looks like something that that Godzilla would fight. Or maybe one of those monsters in the old stop motion monster movies.
Right. And it's how short its face is.
Yeah.
And I've read other sightings saying that its face was short like an otter's. But there's always a reptilian pitch to it.
It looks like, did you ever play the game Primal Rage?
Yeah.
Because it kind of, with a shorter neck, but it kind of looks like Vertigo from Primal Rage.
It's like a bulbous shaped Vertigo.
A lumpy Vertigo.
Well, apparently, Mr. Hobley took interest in hearing this story from Mr. Jordan, because later in 1913, the creature made another appearance in the form of an article by Charles Hobley, the former deputy commissioner who personally knew Bronson. He published an article in the Journal of East Africa Uganda Natural History Society, where he discusses, quote, some other unidentified beasts, and he mentioned Bronson's account in Jordan's story. And according to Hobley, he says, quote, at the time this story appeared, it was considered that it was probably a traveler's tale, told to entertain a newcomer. But I have since met a man who a few years back, wandering about the Mara River, or Maggori River, which rises in Stotic across the Anglo-German boundary and runs into Lake Victoria in German territory. He empathetically asserts that he saw the beast. He was at the time where the Mara River crossed the frontier, and the river was high in flood. The beast came floating down the river on a big log, and he estimated its length about 16 feet, but could not ascertain of its length, as its tail was in the water. He describes it as spotted like a leopard, covered with scales, having a head like an otter. He did not see the long fangs described by Mr. Jordan. He fired at it and hit it. It slid off the log into the water and was not seen again. So that's another account of this creature seen by somebody else. Apparently this Mr. Hobley took an interest in this story and did a bunch of research and found...
Based on the statement he made that it was a thought to be a traveler's tale told to new people in the area, that gives it a feel of the fearsome creatures of the Lumberwoods just in Africa. So instead of being frontiersmen in North America, these are British explorers.
That could be the case, but I think that kind of falls away when, Hobley himself, who is the former commissioner dude, knows so much about the people, their culture, their rituals, and what they do. And he wasn't just some guy who was telling the story. This was coming from a couple of credible dudes who had no reason to lie. Jordan did writing an article later himself about what he saw, but I don't get so much of the feeling of a campfire story thing. This wasn't something that was told around a campfire by a bunch of people. This was a story told by a legend to another semi-legend around a campfire. And maybe that story got out to maybe other European and Western people. But again,
because it was two badasses, what if it was like one of those just telling tales type thing? Like, oh yeah, you've seen a giant spider? Well, listen to this story. I saw a giant saber-toothed fucking alligator monster that stood on its tail and wanted to fuck my shit up. And then the other dude responded with, "Oh yeah, well, when I saw that giant spider, what I meant to say was that it was then eaten by a 3,000 foot tall ogre, and I barely escaped with my life."
It's just a whose junk's bigger contest, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. They're just trying to come up with the craziest shit possible.
Who knows? But it wasn't like a story amongst the people. It wasn't a campfire story amongst the locals, the natives. It was just something that existed there. So a campfire story from Westerner and European ears, probably. I mean, I'm sure that after that story got around, other hunters heard it and was like, listen to this bullshit that this asshole said he heard or saw. So, I mean, it could have traveled that way. But again, to the locals, it wasn't a campfire story. There were people who had parts of their religion devoted to this serpent in this lake.
That's crazy. Fucking serpent religion.
Right. Now, in 1918, a Canadian magazine by the name of Maclean's ran an article which gathered a bunch of witness accounts recorded. I don't know if they went and investigated and got new ones, but they gathered Bronson's writings as well, and even included copying an article written by Jordan himself for the Worldwide magazine, and came to the conclusion that there were so many sightings by witnesses that couldn't be discredited that they declared it a newly discovered animal species. And here's a quote from Jordan's article from that Worldwide News magazine. It says, quote, "It lives in Lake Victoria and its numerous tributaries, and there is no record of the monster having been seen in any other part of the world. Whether it is a descendant of one of those huge prehistoric saurian that has by process of adaptation, living as it does in impenetrable regions far away from the encroachments of civilized man, continued with but slight modifications through prodigious ages to the present time, or whether it is an unclassified reptile or amphibian, it is equally impossible to say, as no specimen exists either of its bones or of its skin. That this monster does exist, however, there can be no practical of doubt, as the testimony of authoritative eyewitnesses cannot be reasonably discredited." So I don't know if it sounds like Jordan's trying to make money off this thing. I mean, he's writing a small article. He wrote one book, from what I understand, I mean, even that book had to be written through somebody else. But it sounded like he wanted to make sure that people had no doubt that this creature was there. It almost, if we kind of translated that into modern talk, he could say that this creature lives here in this fucking place. If it's a fucking dinosaur, I don't fucking know. If it's some type of unknown creature, I don't fucking know. But it's there. That's all I'm fucking saying.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I don't fucking know. It's a dinosaur. It's a reptile. It's fucking scary and it's huge and it lives in that lake right there. Stay the fuck away.
Yeah. So Jordan himself, who is the guy who told the story to Bronson, so this is the guy who saw it. I mean, I think he's credible as shit, as credible as Percy Fawcett would have been. I mean, this guy seemed to be a no-nonsense guy. Even Bronson seemed like to be a no-nonsense type person. And he heard the story, talked to official of the area, and he goes, "Oh yeah, there is a serpent that lives in that lake over there, and they worship the thing." How amazing is it to hear that, and to read more into it, find out that it's just commonplace there, and other people have seen it. I mean, apparently, through Hobley's story, someone else who was carrying a rifle saw it and shot at it, and again, it did nothing to it.
Like they missed it, or it bounced off and did nothing.
Jordan said that he hit that puppy, and he even was dumbfounded that it moved after he hit it. He was so sure that he hit it right behind the fucking ear. And the person from Hobley's account in that report article anyway said that they hit it. They were sure they hit it. And it just kind of looked at them or in that direction and slid off into the water.
Did they record any sort of noise when they hit? Or did they just say they hit it?
No. And I found that interesting. There was no report of this thing making any noise.
Because, I mean, saying that they're sure they hit it, that could just be their own ego getting in the way and be like, I know I hit that fucker and it's got away, but I know I hit it.
Jordan said he was but 10 yards away.
Well, maybe Jordan just sucks at shooting things.
I don't know. This is a legendary big game hunter. His job is to shoot things.
What if he's a fraud? What if he goes out on these excursions with his two friends and he just sits back sipping on tea, sitting under a parasol, and they're out there in the hot weather in the sticky jungle fighting mosquitoes and trying to hunt these animals for him, and then they bring him back and he takes all the glory and like, you son of a bitch. Secretly deep down inside they just want to tie his shoelaces together and push him over.
Yep. Or he's just sitting in his tent chilling while he has taxidermied animals shipped into him. He's like, I shot this.
No, he doesn't even need them shipped in. He just sends his two servants out there to go kill the animals and bring them back. And then he's like, ha, I am the master game hunter.
Yeah, but I love this monster. It's got it checks almost all the boxes for me. It's got the really credible witnesses. Though neither of those guys were schlubs. I like the what I call the no duh effect it has with the native people. Yeah, we call that thing of this. We know what it is for sure. Deeper investigating that Bronson and Hobley did. Hobley probably because of his position in the area, but it checks a lot of boxes for me. I love this creature. How I don't let it bleed into the legends and folklore of the area to me. I don't know if that's because we have a European or Western sighting to recite, or if it's just the description of this creature.
But if it was real, what happened to it? Why was he the last person to write about it? Where's the modern sightings? Where's other explorers that came after him? Where is it?
Right, and that's something I found researching this interestingly enough. When Percy Fawcett talked about those giant spiders, he talked to the locals about it as well. That's where he got some information about it. He said he saw them and he talked to the locals about it. And they're like, yeah, those are this thing. And they're small now. They used to be a lot bigger. They're from this area. They even went as far as to say when they're born, they're born out of eggs that are in the shape of a peanut. And when they come out, they're bright yellow with a purple belly, and they get darker over time, and they turn into the traditional colored, regular common spider that we all know and love. And the people talked about how they used to be abundant. They were around a lot more, but over time, they've just died out. You don't see them that much at all anymore. But they used to be a danger living in the jungle. So maybe it's something as simple as that.
Or maybe they're in hibernation, waiting for when they can reclaim the earth and join the immortal spider. And all the spiders are just smaller manifestations of this one immortal spider that lives in the middle of the woods, or the middle of the jungle, I'm sorry. And again, it's 27 feet long. It only feeds off dinosaurs. So that's why as the years go on, we hear less and less about Mokele and Bembe. We haven't heard about this guy. We haven't heard about any of the other ones Like, because there was a time when there were lots of reports of different sorts of dinosaur beasts in the jungle, in the remote places of Africa. And what if this giant immortal spider is just eating all the cryptids in Africa? And it's got like this weird siren song where it lures them to it, and then it kills them, and then from their desiccated corpses, all the other spiders spring forth and populate everything. And eventually the world is just going to be run by spiders. Like, there'll be spider businessmen and spider taxi drivers and spider daredevils. It's going to be Spiderland.
Yep. It's going to be like a bad Marvel Universe change.
Yeah, and like spiders, little kids spiders are going to freak out, and their parents are coming in the room. What's going on? I saw a human on my pillow. I can't sleep. There was a human in my room. I'll never sleep again.
They're poisonous.
Yeah. And then Dad's like, how many times have I told you? Humans are poisonous. They're venomous. Just don't let them bite you.
And then he's got to sleep in with the parents because he's just not going to listen. And
yeah, he can't sleep in your room when you've got a human under your bed. You just can't. It's impossible to fall asleep. You know it's in there. You saw it fall. It's somewhere in the room. What are you going to do? I don't blame that spider child. I wouldn't want a human in my room either. Fuck out of here. Get out from under my bed, you creep.
So for you, Mike, what type of evidence would you want? Let's say from the local people that would convince you that this wasn't something that a couple of big game hunter hotshots weren't making up just to sound cool. Besides a corpse,
I would need. Well, okay, no corpse.
It's sacred to them. Remember, they're not going to want to kill this thing.
I would need prints, tracks, photograph, video footage. Anything like that. Evidence of it eating an entire village. Anything like that.
Okay, well. Here, I've got something for you that might pique your interest. I'm going to email it to you right now. Apparently, Mr. Hobley came across cave paintings of this very creature in the region.
Oh, that's interesting.
To its spots.
And the tusks. And the tail.
Yeah, you see how the tip of the tail gets flat and fishy, like Jordan said?
Yep. Wow. But, well...
That puts a whole twist on this entire story. To me, that's
because this could be a depiction of a walrus, though.
In the Congo?
I mean, not necessarily in the Congo, but what if it was like somebody saw a walrus? Like say they went to South Africa, and they're off the coast of South Africa, and they see this walrus, and they come back to the Congo, and they're like, "Oh my God, I traveled all the way to the ocean." And I saw this crazy hell beast that had a flat tail, and it had this little round head and no ears and these huge tusks.
I don't know, man. Even in that painting, it looks like a hippo that they've speared, that they're trying to take down, and this other creature's come up on in the middle of their hunt. To me, this thing is no question what they're describing. He said it was hard to see its legs. It's got tiny wee baby legs. It's got the leopards.
That's another thing, though. Like, if you've never seen a walrus before, and you'd see the front flippers, which would appear to be his front legs, and then they're like, you can't even see the back legs, and it has a flat fishtail. And look at the back end of a walrus. It does look like it has a flat fishtail, and there aren't any back legs because it's part of its, I guess technically they're legs, but it's their flippers. And I don't know, this looks a lot like a walrus to me.
It very well could be. I would love to see the guy who painted this on a cave, whoever knows how long ago, give him a picture of a walrus and be like, do that and and compare it. But I love Dick in the Neck, as I call him, and he's going to stay as a beast in Africa for me. He's going to be an adult twister game move.
Well, I'm all for weird cryptids, so anytime one can be real, I would like it to be real. But based on the evidence that I've been presented with here, I've got to say I'm not convinced.
No!
I'm sorry, man.
You gotta believe in Dick in the Neck to make him real.
to me, it sounds like a pissing contest between two big game hunters in Africa during colonial occupation.
Even with all the local support of
even with the local support,
even though it bleeds into their religious belief system.
But so even though it bleeds into the religious belief system, that could be something that came down through centuries, like through legend, and because of this local backing, I think that's why it became part of the pissing contest. Because that creature that Jim from the village over there was talking about. Well, I saw it. Yeah, I wrestled it. I put it in a fucking headlock. Tried to extract one of those teeth, but you know what? Those scales are slippery. He slid right out from under me, and he just slithered his way back into the lake. I'll get him next time, that son of a bitch.
Don't you think he'd be more likely to tell that to somebody who's never going to be where this creature is said to be? I mean...
No, because what I think is likely that happened in this instance is these guys were having a pissing contest, and someone overheard it, took their reputation into account, and was like, oh shit, these guys are fighting monsters out there, man. There's a hell beast out there. And that creature that the locals are talking about really is real. These guys have seen it. I'm not convinced, Mateo.
I don't know. I don't know how it can be like that if it's been around for millions of years through the religion.
Well, it wouldn't have been millions of years, and I mean, look at religion, just any religion. You can look at Greek mythology, and we're not sitting here saying that Gorgons and Pegasus are real because they were part of the religious belief system. We're not saying that the gods are really on Mount Olympus.
Not anymore, because you stopped believing them. I mean, jerk.
I mean, there was a point in time when the Egyptian pharaohs were thought to be an earthly manifestation of God. So, just because it's tied to religious beliefs does not necessarily mean it's real.
Right.
I mean, and maybe at some point in time, it was real.
It might not be real, but to me, it sure isn't. It's a big mark in the air.
Are you going to cry and just say, it's still real to me, damn it?
I still cringe when I see that footage, dude.
I know,
Somebody
it's
just put
so
that up
terrible.
recently. I was like, ooh.
That poor guy.
He wanted everybody to feel it with him, but he overdid it, and it was weird.
Yeah, and now he shall forever live in infamy.
Dick neck is real to me, damn it.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to make a little announcement. Sometimes we come across stuff that's just not enough to make a whole show out of. So what we've done is made a new Patreon show called The Quick and the Weird. If you're interested in listening to shorter episodes about stuff that we can't cover on the normal show, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/thewhatcast and check that out if you're interested. If not, who cares? Thanks for listening, you guys. Have a good one.
On YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.